Well, we are in episode 3 of our series, Breathing Room, where we've been talking about how we can clear the clutter in our overcrowded, overbusy lives and get a little bit of breathing room. If you were with us last week, if you weren't with us last week, you can find last week's message and all of our previous messages online. Just go to our website at wearegracepoint.com, click the link that says podcast, and there'll be links there to all of our previous messages. But if you were with us last week, if you'll remember that I invited you to do a digital detox with me. I invited you to turn your smartphone into a dumb phone and to find your eremos, find your quiet space. And January is the perfect time to put this spiritual practice into place. It's a perfect time to start off the new year the right way. Now, I know over the last couple of weeks as we've been into this series, I've been asking you to give up a lot. And I felt like now that we're 3 episodes in, that I just wanted to give you something that's a little bit more liberating, a little bit more freeing. And for those of you who are here in the United States watching us, you know that last week we celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And so a lot of you got Monday off because it was a holiday. And so I want you to hear this, because today what I want to show you, what I want to talk to you about is that God wants you, get this, to take a day off. You already got a day off last week. He wants you to take a day off this week and next week and the week after that. He wants you to take off. Now listen, a lot of you out there, you're feeling stressed right now. And you're the ones that you're the ones that need to hear this. I need to hear this because I fall into this trap too, where we get into what we're doing and we feel like there's not enough hours in the day, there's not enough days in the week. Our work is never done. And it's easy to feel that way. It's easy to feel like no matter how hard we try, we're still always on that hamster wheel, still running and running. And it's difficult to relax. Right? And we're doing so much that we can't even enjoy it. And if you've ever felt like that, listen to me, I can relate to that. A few years ago, well, more than a few years ago now, but a while back, I had a brush with burnout. It was back in the mid-2000s. My family and I were living in Central Florida at the time. I was not in ministry. I was working in the marketplace. I was running my own business. I was doing that full time, and at the same time, I was serving as a volunteer campus pastor at the main campus of my church in Florida. And it was a great time because both were growing. The business was growing, the church was growing, and there was just lots of work to do. And I was working all the time, shuttling back and forth between my church office and my business office. And I told myself that this isn't going to be forever. And I was just going to do this until things got settled, until we kind of got things over the hump, and then it would be easy, and then I could pull back a little bit. But then, instead of doing that, for some reason, we decided to start and plant a brand new campus of the church. It was going to be a Friday night campus. It was going to be kind of cafe style with lots of sofas and candles and a live band. And it was going to be on Friday nights. And by that time, I was spending 4, sometimes 5 nights a week away from home. And even when I was home, I wasn't really home because I was still working, still thinking about work, my work and my church work. And I noticed one day, and I can't remember exactly when, because it was probably happening for a while, but I noticed that my wife was starting to refer to this new campus, this new church that we planted, as your church. Not our church or the church. She kept calling it your church. And then I noticed she wasn't coming to the church every week. I mean, granted, we were going to the campus on Friday night and then still the regular campus on the weekends, but she comes to everything. And so for her to not come, it got me thinking, and I started to realize, okay, something is going on here. And in all of my hustle and bustle, in all of my work and striving and spending all that extra time and every minute that I had left trying to build a great business and a great church, it turns out I was neglecting the thing that I kept telling myself was the reason that I was working so hard. I was neglecting the things that were most important to me. And I have to tell you, that was a rough season, and it took me time to get out of it, time to get my head into the right place and put things back into the right priority. But I have to tell you, though, that one of the things, maybe one of the biggest things that helped me turn around that season and that need in my heart to always be on and always be working, was that I made the decision to stop sinning and really starting to take a Sabbath. Now, Sabbath is just the English word for the Jewish word Shabbat. And Shabbat, it just means to stop. It means to cease from your work, to pause from your work, both your paid work and your unpaid work, and then rest. Now, my family, over the years, we've developed a way that we practice Sabbath. In my household, we do it the same way that Jesus did. We practice Shabbat, Sabbath, from Friday sunset until Saturday sunset. And you know, my kids are back living at home for a season, for a short while, and I love it. It's great. And one of the things, though, that we did when they moved back was that we had a family meeting. And we talked about how we were going to practice Sabbath in our home. And so we developed, and together we settled on what was going to be our Sabbath routine. And so we decided that we're going to put away devices, that there was going to be no regular television or news. That was the tough one for me. Can't watch the news, right? We would come together on Friday evenings. We would share a Sabbath meal. We would light the Shabbat candles, and we would eat, and we would talk. We share a bottle of wine. We would take communion together at the end of the meal, and then we would pray. And then we would sit around and talk some more. And dessert, if there was dessert, there's always dessert. But we would spend time to intentionally connect, to rebuild the intimacy that sometimes can get lost in that meat grinder of the work week. And so for us, Sabbath is life-giving for our family. It's a break time for our family. It gives us breathing room. I have to tell you that Sabbath is also, for me personally, just God's grace and God's mercy on me, because it's given me more peace. It's allowed me to work through my week at a sustainable pace. Now listen, the pace is still crazy, but it's not toxic. It's sustainable. And I believe that there is a reason why God put this command for Sabbath right in the middle of the Ten Commandments. Right in the middle. And what I want to teach you today is how to take a day off. And my hope is that after today, as we go through and read God's Word and see what Jesus has to say about it, that we will develop for ourselves this rhythm of rest that will help us find a healthy work-life balance. Now, this spiritual practice of Sabbath was actually God's gift to His people. You see, His people, the Israelites, were in Egypt, and they were slaves under Pharaoh. And God freed them from that slavery. And then He gave them these 10 commandments. And when you think of the 10 commandments, a lot of times what we focus on are all the thou shalt nots. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, all of the thou shalt nots. But in the middle of the 10 commandments, in the middle of all those thou shalt nots, there is one thou shalt, the one positive one, where God says, take a day off. It's recorded in what we call today the book of Exodus, which was actually just a manuscript that was written and has survived through thousands of years that we are able to read today. It's in Exodus in the 20th chapter, and this is what it says. This is the fourth command of the 10 commandments. God says, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Now, I think sometimes, especially here in the West, we think of holy and we think of pious or being good. Like we have this image of a guy with his hands like this and then the halo around his head, and that's what it means to be holy. Like you do good things. But holy simply means to be set apart for a specific purpose. That's all it means. It means to be set apart for a specific purpose. And God says, remember to observe the Sabbath day, and how you observe it is by keeping it set apart for a specific purpose. He goes on to say that you have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. But the seventh day is a Shabbat, a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. And what reason does God give us for taking the Sabbath off? Why is it that we have to Sabbath? He actually tells us why in the very next verse. Listen to what he says. He says, "For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy." Do you know that this is the first time anywhere in Scripture that God designates something, says that something is holy, that it is sacred, that it is set apart for a special purpose? When we look at Sabbath, it wasn't actually given here on the Ten Commandments, because remember how it starts. It starts with remember. Sabbath wasn't given during the Ten Commandments. Sabbath was actually given at creation. If we go back to the very first book of the Scriptures, the book of Genesis, where it talks about the creation of the earth, where God talks about creation, he says, in 6 days, God created everything you see. The skies, the sun, the moon, the water, everything on earth, he created it all. Now you think you have, we come home at the end of the day and we think, wow, I really had a productive day today, man. I just did so much. I got so much done. I really killed it today. And God's looking at us and going like, yeah, really? I made a giraffe. Oh, okay. I guess you're doing it better, right? And then God does something amazing. After 6 days of creating everything that you and I see, he rested. He stopped. Now listen, if God rested from doing his work, from creating the entire universe, don't you think that you and I need to do that too? You see, Sabbath is more than just what we practice as like the American weekend. Because for us, our version of Sabbath, our version of rest is the days that we get to catch up on our chores, where we watch football, where we're just vegging out and doing nothing, or we're catching up on the busyness that we didn't get to do during the week. We run all of our errands, we go shopping, we do all those things that we weren't able to get done during the week, we get that done on the weekend. But to have a true Sabbath, a true 24-hour period of rest, is completely different. In fact, Jesus' followers do 4 things when they practice Sabbath. There are 4 things that you do when you practice Sabbath. The first thing you do is you stop all work, paid and unpaid work. And that's the important thing, because we have a lot of paid work, but there's also unpaid work that we do. The laundry, the vacuuming and the dusting, all of those things. Jesus says you've got to stop all of your work, paid work and unpaid work, because that's what Sabbath means, right? Sabbath means stop. Shabbat is the word for stop, to stop all work, to stop working, and to stop wanting more things, and to stop worrying, because we know that even when we stop working, God is still working. God can take care of it. So after we stop all of our work, the next thing we do is that we rest our soul. And you know that word for soul is not a spirit. That word for soul actually encompasses your whole body, everything about you. The whole person, the physical part of you, the emotional part of you, the mental part of you, the spiritual part of you. It's all of you. And all of you needs rest. That we can relax and rest, because God can run the universe without our opinions and without our help. And when we stop and then we rest, it leads us to delight. And for me, this is the best part, because we're supposed to delight on the Sabbath. We're supposed to take time to do what pampers your soul. So let me ask you, what is it that pampers your soul? What is it that brings you joy? What brings life and wonder and gratitude and happiness into your soul? Maybe for some of you, you like to go out hiking in nature. That just refreshes you and energizes you. For some of you, maybe like me, you know what refreshes your soul? It's going out with friends and having food and great conversation. Not fast food, slow food and slow conversation. Maybe for you, it's spending time with family, Or it might be listening to music. It might be reading, catching up on your reading, or just hanging out with your friends and having great conversation. There's lots of things you can do to restore your soul. You know that the Jewish people actually have a special name for a Sabbath afternoon nap? The Sabbath nap, you know what they call it? They call it the Sabbath Shloof. The Sabbath Shloof. Come on, let's shloof. I love that, the Sabbath Shloof. In fact, there's another Jewish tradition that says, thou shalt make love to your spouse on the Sabbath. We do what refreshes and energizes and pampers our soul. We delight in that. And then ultimately on Sabbath, we worship. We slow down and we position our hearts in a place of praise and a position of gratitude for God that allows us to connect to our Creator, to remember what Jesus has done for us. Jesus, who is our Savior, who paid the price for us. It allows us to really experience and savor His grace that allows us to come to Him just as we are. And it moves us to worship. Now, I understand that some of you who are listening today, you're probably starting to freak out a little bit, because the idea of taking a true Sabbath, of really taking a day off every week is very countercultural to us, especially here in the Bay Area where everything is going at such a fast pace and there's so much to do all the time. You see, there's a difference between having a secular rhythm and a Sabbath rhythm to our lives. Most of us live with a secular rhythm, and this is how the secular rhythm often goes. It's like work, 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 work. Oh, vacation. And then we get to vacation, and vacation goes so quick, and then it's back to work, 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 and you just go crazy, and you end up frazzled and frustrated, and then you just, vacation. And that kind of a rhythm is not healthy. But you see, a Sabbath rhythm is different. A Sabbath rhythm goes like this. Sabbath, work. Sabbath, work. Breathe in, breathe out. Sabbath is woven into the fabric of creation. The tide goes in, the tide goes out. The sun goes up, the sun goes down. We work, we rest. Breathe in, breathe out. You see, you and I, we are part of God's creation, and so we're also created to live with that rhythm of work and rest. Now watch this. On Sabbath, we rest from our work, and then the next day, we work from our rest. We get well rested. We're relaxed because we're cooperating with God's divine rhythm that He placed in you and me. Now listen, if you're going to do this, if you are going to really take a real, true Sabbath, it's going to require preparation. If you are really going to take a Sabbath, you have to finish your other work in the 6 days, both the paid and the unpaid work. It's what we have to do. We have to get ready. Right? You ever wonder why God rested, why He needed rest? At the end of the the 6 days, why did He need rest? It wasn't because God looked around and goes, "Whew, boy, I'm tired." No, that's not what He said. He wasn't tired. Right? He rested in order to take time to intentionally delight in what He had created. Multiple times throughout the creation process, God will create, and then He will say, "That's good." Right? In fact, at the end of the creation story, it says this. It says, "Then God looked over all He had made, and He saw that it was very good." So He creates the Milky Way, and He goes, "Oh, that's good." And He creates the sun, and He says, "Oh, that's good." And He creates a rhinoceros, and He says, "Oh, that's good." And He creates cats, and okay, yeah, that's good. And then he creates man and woman, and he says, man, that's very, very good. He took time to savor and to enjoy his accomplishments. So what is it that brings you deep joy and delight? Whatever that is what Sabbath is for. Now, you might be getting nervous, right? You might be thinking to yourself, man, this guy just doesn't understand. We're in the busy season at work. Like, I can't step on the brakes right now. You know, I've got stuff happening right now. I'm right in the middle of classes, and finals are coming up. A big exam is coming up, right? Or you don't know what's going on in my family right now. There's just so much going on with my family that I just don't have time for this. Listen, I get it. I live in the Bay Area too. I know how fast the pace of life is here. And for a lot of you who aren't in the Bay Area, wherever you live probably has a fast pace of life too. It's go, go, go all the time. I understand that. Excuse me. Part of our problem is that here we live in pretty much a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week culture. Right? Everything is going all the time. Everything is always open for business. There's practically nothing that you can't do and find somewhere that's going on 24 hours a day. And in our fast-paced culture, we are encouraged and rewarded to continue to work every minute. We're rewarded by working harder, but working faster, by being more productive, by maximizing our profits. In fact, as I looked around and I tried to research this, I could only find one company that embraces the practice of Sabbath as part of their business strategy. And that company is Chick-fil-A. I know a lot of you are Chick-fil-A fans out there, and so if you are a Chick-fil-A fan, then you know that Chick-fil-A is closed on Sundays. They're closed on Sundays. I found this article on the founder of Chick-fil-A, a man named Truett Cathy. And Truett Cathy opened his first restaurant in 1946. And he made the decision to put Sabbath into his business practice, not after he made billions of dollars, but he did it right from the very beginning. And the critics said, man, you're crazy. You can't close a day on the weekend. The weekend is when more people come to eat out. If you close one day on the weekend, you'll never be profitable. You are going to lose money. But Truett Cathy was a follower of Jesus. And he made the decision to build his business on biblical principles. He was committed to it. And he decided that he was going to honor the Sabbath as he understood it. And he put that into his business plan. You see, because Cathy grew up working in a 24-hour restaurant. The restaurant was open 24 hours a day. And so he knew what it was like to have to work all the time. And when he grew up and decided that he was going to own his own business, where he was going to be the one to make decisions, he decided that he was going to close on Sundays. That means every Chick-fil-A employee, from the boardroom to the drive-thru, gets Sunday off for them to rest, to worship if they want to spend time with their families. In fact, in his book, Eat More Chicken, makes sense, this is what he said. Listen to this. He says, closing our business on Sunday, the Lord's Day, is our way of honoring God and showing our loyalty to Him. My brother Ben and I closed our first restaurant on the first Sunday after we opened in 1946, and my children have committed to closing our restaurants on Sundays long after I'm gone. I believe God honors our decision and sets before us unexpected opportunities to do greater work for Him because of our loyalty. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? In a really, really tough and competitive industry like fast food, he made the decision to stick to his principles and to honor God and to honor all of the people that work for his company. In that same Business Insider article, it talks about how Chick-fil-A over the years has had explosive growth. They are now the third largest chain behind McDonald's and Starbucks. Gross revenues are over $11 billion. But get this. Researchers estimate that by being closed on Sunday, Chick-fil-A loses over $1.5 billion a year. $1.5 billion a year. Would you give up $1.5 billion of profit every year? See, he made the decision to literally put people over profit, to put God ahead of greed. And as he honored the Sabbath, God multiplied his blessings. And he will do that for us too. If we honor the Sabbath, God will multiply our blessings. You know why? Because it shows that we trust him. That we trust him, that we can stop and rest and know that he's still going and he is still managing the universe and he is still weaving things together for our good. Now, it was a radical concept 3,500 years ago when it was reintroduced to the Israelites. I believe that it's even more radical today in the busy, fast-paced, distraction-filled San Francisco Bay Area that many of us live in. Remember in our very first episode, we listened to what Dallas Willard said. He said, hurry is the great enemy of our spiritual life in our day. And we can't be emotionally healthy in our relationships and grow spiritually with God without taking a day off to relax, to rest, to restore our souls, a day off that's devoted to him. So listen, if you want 2023 to be different, if you want to get a Sabbath rhythm into your life, if you want to add Sabbath to your routine, I know that it is a scary step for a lot of us. But if you want to do that, I want to teach you how to do it. I want to give you some practical guidelines on how you can easily and quickly create a Sabbath rhythm for your life. 3 steps. The first thing you have to do is you have to designate a day, a 24-hour period. Now, I want to encourage you to try practicing Sabbath from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset. That 24-hour day. And I'm going to give you some really practical reasons why. The first is that our typical work week for many of us is Monday through Friday. So stopping work on Friday makes a lot of sense. Friday is the end of the work week. It's a great time for us to pause and break and rest. Second, in our culture today, Saturday is family day. Saturday is the day we go to birthday parties, where we spend time with our families, or with sports are all happening on Saturday. And so Saturday is already the day that we spend time with our families. And for a lot of people, especially here in the Bay Area, Sunday is prep day. Sunday is the day that we meal prep and do laundry and go to the grocery store. Sunday is the day we do all of our errands to prepare for the week of work that's coming ahead. Third, that's what Jesus did. That's how Jesus practiced Sabbath. And if it was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. Now, whatever it is that you decide, just make sure that it is 24 hours. And if you need one more reason, well, listen, the best reason of all, football is on Sundays. And you never have to miss a football game if you practice Sabbath from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset. But whatever you decide, the first thing you have to do is you have to designate a day and come to agreement with your family, with your spouse, with your children, that this is going to be the day that we are going to Sabbath. The second thing you have to do after you designate a day is you have to set clear boundaries. You have to set apart Sabbath from business as usual and what you do the other 6 days. So sit down and decide and make a plan. What is it that are the boundaries for Sabbath, and what are the things that you have to do the other 6 days to make sure that you are able to truly take a Sabbath? So you designate a day and you set clear boundaries, and then, and this is the best part, you sit down with your spouse, you sit down with your family, with your kids, and you make a happy list. Make a list of the people or the places or the activities that energize you, that are life-giving to your soul, that you can do together that will make you happy. And it's going to be different for everybody. For some people, the thing that you want to do more than anything that really re-energizes your soul is being out in nature and hiking. I got to tell you, for me, that is not energizing to my soul. For other people, cooking is a chore. Cooking is not life-giving or energizing, but for me, I love to cook. I love to make things food-wise, except for baking. I love to make things. I love to cook. So for me, cooking food and then watching people enjoy the food that I make, that's not a chore for me. That brings me joy. Whatever it is. Maybe it's reading, not reading for work, but reading for pleasure. Pick up that novel that you haven't read, haven't gotten to, but you've always wanted to read. Right? Whatever it is that you can do to cultivate a spirit of rest. Take a Shabbat shloof. Make love to your spouse. Do whatever pampers your soul. But just remember this. There's a difference between recreation and restoration. Too often we confuse the two and we do things that are recreation and we don't get that they are not restoration, right? Because restoration restores your soul. Recreation is usually just going out and wrecking creation. Listen, I know this is hard. I know that thinking about this is difficult. And some of you, you've already dismissed this today. And hey, God bless you. I understand why. This is a tough one. But for some of you, you're starting to feel like deep down inside, the liberation of what that would feel like to have a day to just put everything else aside and spend time doing the things that pamper your soul, that energize you, spending time with the people that you love and spending time in worship to God. I know it's hard, but listen, I want to show you this. You know that the Ten Commandments actually appear in the Scriptures in two different places. They appear once in Exodus when the people, the Israelites had come out into the wilderness and Moses gave them the Ten Commandments. But it appears a second time in another book in the Scriptures called Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy. And Deuteronomy comes from two words. Deuter meaning second and nomos meaning law. So it's the second reading of the law. That's Deuteronomy. Except now it's 40 years after the events of Exodus. And it's the next generation of people that have come up. The next generation of people who are the Israelites, right? The children who left are now all grown up. And so God wants to tell his commands now again to the next generation. And when you read the writing of the fourth commandment there in Deuteronomy, it is word for word the same as it is in Exodus. In fact, but there is one difference. Now, here's how it starts. It says, observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded you. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. So in Exodus, God says, keep the Sabbath, but then he says that Sabbath, the reason that we're going to keep the Sabbath is because God rested on the seventh day, and so you should rest on the seventh day. That's what it says in Exodus. But in Deuteronomy, it's different. Listen to what he says. At the end of it, it says, remember that you were once slaves in Egypt, but the Lord your God brought you out with his strong and powerful hand. You see, the Israelites had been slaves in Egypt for 400 years, and for 400 years, they could not Sabbath. They had no Sabbath. They worked 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for this guy. Well, not literally this guy, because that's Yul Brynner, but Pharaoh. He worked for Pharaoh. And Pharaoh was a tyrant. He was oppressive to the Jewish people. He exploited them. He made them slave labor to build his big cities. And for 400 years, they were slaves. Can you imagine what that was like? To be there where your parents never knew freedom. Your grandparents died as slaves. Your great-grandparents died as slaves. They never tasted freedom. They never did anything that brought delight into their souls. They never took a vacation. Their only identity was slave of Egypt. And listen, in that culture, I want you to get this. In that culture, if you didn't work, you had no worth. Does that sound familiar? In that culture, your work determined your worth. Now, Pharaoh may be gone, but I'm telling you that Egypt is alive and well in many of our cultures today. Because our identity is so closely tied to our work. It is. It's how we introduce ourselves. You go to a party and you say, oh, hi, this is Joe. I want you to meet somebody. This is Joe. He's a doctor. Oh, this is Jerry. He's my dry cleaner. You know, we introduce people by their work. That's who we're identified as. But listen, what you do is always going to be part of what you are, but it is not the deepest truth about who you are. In God's sight, you are a human being, not a human doing. And sometimes that gets all twisted around, where our titles or our job or the initials that come after our name or our net worth becomes the foundation of our identity. And we swallow this cultural lie that is alive and well today, just as it was 3,500 years ago in Egypt. We swallow the lie that says that your work determines your worth. And believing that is satanic. It leads to slavery. In God's sight, your work doesn't determine your worth. In God's sight, you are a loved son or daughter of the Most High, of the Most High God, of the Creator of the universe. He says, I came in with my powerful, mighty arm, and I rescued you from slavery. I'm bringing you out of that slavery. I'm freeing you from that place that says that your work determines your worth, because it doesn't. Your identity is not in your job. Your worth is not measured by your net worth. Your worth is measured by the price that was paid for you. And the price that was paid for you and me is the life of Jesus. The body and the blood of Jesus is what was paid for you. That is what you and I are worth. Listen to me. I hope you hear me. Some of you need to hear this. Listen. You are fully loved just as you are. You are fully accepted just as you are. Just as you are right now. Not because of your performance, not because of your production, just as you are. Your worth doesn't come from what you do. Your worth comes from what Jesus already did for you. And because of that, because Jesus says it is finished, it is done, the work is done, we can rest. And so one final thing. I want you to give yourself and to give other people grace when they related to how they practice and how you practice Sabbath. Listen, how you Sabbath will be different for other people. And that's okay. Jesus said that Sabbath was made for people and not people for the Sabbath. In fact, in the translation that we often use, that I always teach in, the New Living Translation, this is how he says it. It says, then Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. So I'm asking you right now, I know that it's hard, but give it a try. I can tell you from personal experience and from dozens of conversations I've had with other people who have done the same thing, that establishing a Sabbath rhythm in your life, practicing Sabbath, resting from our work, and then working from our rest is life-changing. It's how God designed us, it's how God created us, and it is how you and I can live our lives with breathing room.
Thank you for joining us for this week's message. Gracepoint Church is located in South San Francisco, California. For additional content or to find out more information about Gracepoint Church, visit us online at wearegracepoint.com.